Welcome back. It is Daybreaker. Topical discussion time it is. The time that we get into the nitty-gritty analysis of what is exactly transpiring in this nation. Well, today we have a topic that you can relate to, everyone can relate to, and that is human rights. Human rights in the wake of police professionalism. Well, there is so much. There were actually journalists also who came out actually this very week who were talking about the brutality that was administered to them when they were actually covering stories at Makerere University. At the same time, so many human rights activists came out on the wake of the arrest of the former FDC president, Dr. Kizza Besigye, and it's something that we need not to ignore. My name is Nora Sende. I am joined by a lawyer. Who else but a lawyer to actually discuss about human rights? Well, we have Simon Ssenyonga. Simon, it's very good to have you on the show. A very good morning.
Good morning.
Have you been looking at the events that's happening in the country?
Yes, I have closely and keenly followed them.
Yes.
Yes, with a lot of interest, especially with a keen eye on human rights.
Yes.
Yes.
So let us start with, what are some of the human rights issues that has been involved, especially with police, in regards to how they handle, suspects, and how they handle, how they conduct their work?
I think, number one, you have to realize that the police has an obligation, especially in the law that takes them, the Police Act, and the Constitution at large, that the first primary role, the reading of Article 20 of the Constitution, is that number one, human rights are inherent and they must be respected by all persons and all government agencies, and the police is one of the government agencies. Then when you look at Article 21 of the Constitution, it talks about the right to equality, that everybody is equal before and under the law. So in the exercise of their duties, the police derives their power, again, from the Constitution, and one of their primary roles is to ensure that they guard life and the property of the citizens of Uganda, but also must carry out their duties with respect to human rights and with utmost professionalism. Now, the police department has a couple of standing orders to guide them on particular issues, on either how they handle, say, on the first part of the question, about how they handle things like riots or things like demonstrations. Yeah. Now, with the story that was shared of retired Colonel Kizza Besigye, the police has both obligations under the local law, but also under international law. And one of those key standards that have to be enforced, especially when you're quelling demonstrations or handling demonstrations, is actually number one, that don't approach the people who are demonstrating with the presumption of them being criminal. And our police actually has kept on conducting themselves in a way, they always presume that somebody is guilty, all right, until they prove themselves innocent. Yet actually the reverse is true, that somebody is innocent until proven guilty, or until actually declares that they are guilty. So in regards to handling demonstrations, the approach should be humane. Yeah. The approach, because police training is training which is meant to be in direct relationship with the civilians. It's not a military police which deals with
when you
police
say,
people.
you say actually the approach should be humane, but don't you think that would be also on the other side of the people being arrested? We, it's very difficult to come with a humane spirit, as a police. You're supposed to do your work. You're supposed to respect people, even when you are arresting them or something. But with everything that's going on, people are approaching you with stones. People are approaching you with sticks or something. And for example, this is Europe. Someone will come and arrest you and call you sir. You're under arrest, sir. May you put your hands up, sir? And unless someone has really shown like some kind of aggression. But our culture is kind of different for some reason. Everyone is so, aggressive. And it just, don't you think that also makes it hard for police to approach people in that light?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the beginning place is the basic standards, as opposed to arguments, as opposed to any subsequent arguments that may arise, such as cultural differences, and the reactionary nature of some of the citizens. But for example, if you're going to conduct an arrest is not an event. An arrest is a process. So meaning that there must be issuance of an arrest warrant. When you're coming to arrest, there must be presentation of the arrest warrant, declaration of the reasons as to why you are arresting me, where are you taking me, is it a gazetted place, say if you want to imprison me, how are you handling me in the process, even if actually there is reaction from the other side, whether negative or positive. In case you're going to use force, the force must be proportional to actually to the danger that is caused. Now, many a times the police has a political mind in terms of quelling, especially political riots or political demonstrations. So what they will do always, they will impose an unproportionate force, but also act extremely unprofessionally through intimidation, through, you've seen, especially for the case of Besigye, where his supporters have been battered before. You've seen how they used that riot water to actually push him almost off the car. You've seen how they have handled it by breaking his property, his vehicle, and tear gassing him. Now, you're talking about a person who even doesn't have a matchstick to cause a fire. A person who has come out to peacefully demonstrate. So that's on one part of it. Now, subsequently, what we see on that side is only a part of it. What happens much more interestingly is after you've been arrested. So, say the preferred charges and the way the process the police has to go through to make you fatigued, either by giving you constant bond appearance without cancellation of the bond, more so when they're actually frivolous charges. Yeah.
Well, there's something that you actually talked about when you talked about the manner in which police actually exerts a lot of should I say, aggression on especially opposition, politicians. But when you think about it, most of, the demonstrations and the, things that are police actually looks at as against the law are actually being done by the opposition, with all due respect, Because if you're going to carry out a procession on Ginger Road without exactly alerting the police, and it's going to disrupt the traffic, we're looking at the travelers on that road, we are looking at people doing businesses on that road. When some of these supporters come, you do not know who is who. Some of them are thieves, they come pickpocketing, or, So it's kind of hard sometimes when we look at, okay, police is targeting opposition. But opposition also needs to be organized, even if they're to do their demonstration or carry out their activities in that light, shouldn't they?
Well, the opposition again needs to be organized, but you see the issue with the problematic aspect of that question that you pose is that it creates a scenario of the opposition versus the police. And obviously you give a solid argument. Yes.
Simon, when you look at Uganda, that is, I think, how it is for some reason, the culture. Some Ugandans have always like, it's us versus them. And I think it's not good. It's kind of enrooted somehow, in the conscious of Ugandans. It's us against them. So is it the attitude of, the public? Is it the police creating it? So it just brings a diversion there.
I think there is a misconstruing of the obligation of the police, the legal obligation of the police. The number one, its presentation has to be in regards to guarding the civilians, whether or not they're in opposition. But what happens right now is that the police is heavily politicized. And they don't come, for example, to protect those who are demonstrating, but either to disperse them or to suppress them. So the thing is this, the police has a legal obligation to guard even those who are in opposition. Maybe the issue that comes up is the question of the laws under which they act. For example, you've seen the Public Order and Management Act, which the police, says that you must notify the police if you're going to make any sort of public gathering, like say a demonstration. And the police has to give you protection. What happens normally with the police is that they'll write back to you, like what happened in the case of Bobby Wine at his beach, they'll write and say, we're not able to give you this protection. And then, if people showed up, actually, the amount of policemen who come to quell the demonstrators is much more than what was required to guard the event. So the police has been heavily politicized. That's only one aspect of it in terms of quelling. Now, the aspect of politicization has also extended to the nature of charges that are opened up, especially against public figures. Now, you've seen, for example, with some of these political figures, you saw the charges that were placed ahead of the 2011 elections, presidential elections, where rape charges were placed on Dr. Kizza Besigye, then subsequently treason charges so that he could be denied appearance on the ballot box. Most recently, you know, as a lawyer, I've been involved in one of those very interesting cases, which is the case of Prophet Elvis Mbonye. Now, what happens with him is that the police moved on and said that, you know, there's been an immunization campaign on measles, rubella. So what they said was that Prophet Elvis Mbonye, using his social media account, went ahead and published information that was decampaigning a government program. So he's summoned by the CID, but by then he wasn't within the country. Now, when he shows up at the CID, in the investigation, what happens is that they say, can you declare what your public accounts, your social media accounts are? And he declares what these accounts were. And the police go through and there was nothing like his official position. But it was another individual who was his names, who was using it. So the question, the simple, even most mediocre question is this. If somebody calls himself, say, Simon Janet Kataha Museveni, all right, and I go and I make a position and I say, for example, I don't like born agains, or I am a witch, for example, or I kill people. And I mean, if I use that, and I'm picked up and I'm told, can they go and pick Janet Kataha Museveni for saying that she's a witch or for declaring such a position? So you realize that after this investigation, at the end of the day, they say we are placing a holding charge on you. What was the holding charge? That under Section 23 of the Immunization Act, you published information that decampaigned a government program. And because of that, you have caused disruption, and because you have a great following, we have to actually give you police bond and you keep on reporting. Now, the thing is this. There is a mismanagement and a misuse of the whole government and institutional process. Because you're putting on, number one, frivolous charges against an individual. You're having an unprofessional way of conducting your investigations. And then you're using a political aspect of fatiguing a person. And even they go ahead, because the police has actually gone ahead. I was reading the standing orders of the police. They have a legal obligation not to disperse of any information to the press or to the media when there is an investigation going on. So what they do is that they use some of you guys in the media and some of your colleagues in the media to actually go ahead and blackmail and malign individuals by putting out false information. So the police, to that extent, has acted very unprofessionally in regards to conducting investigations, using frivolous charges, but also politically using the media to actually front weird stories so that they can cause a sort of a social discontent and a social mistrust against public officials and public individuals, so that they can have a political way of maligning them and also discrediting them before the public, which is extremely against unprofessional and unconstitutional and illegal for the police.
Wow. We are having a discussion of human rights realization, specifically on the wake of professionalism by the police force. Simon Ssenyonga, a lawyer, is with me. We are breaking it down for you, and we can't wait. Just after the break, we'll be right back. We're still looking at the professionalism in the wake of human rights of police in Uganda. Good morning.
This weekend,
I can't count the times I almost said what's on my mind, but I didn't. Just the other day, wrote down all the things I'd say, but I couldn't.
Crazy things that women do for love.
That jealousness, that being so tight on someone, it's so crazy.
They do a lot, including me. I was in a taxi and I think that lady Vambi was really in love. She was putting on the boyfriend's underwear. You share the same towel, same toothbrush. No, not toothbrush. No.
These are health issues.
Yeah, but you kiss him.
I've seen many trying to give in. Whenever you see your man, you want to have it on a daily or every time because you love this person, and that's crazy.
Like, checking a man's phone, and you go in phone book, you look for women's contacts, and you start calling them. You end up deleting all of them.
This weekend on Urban Square.
Record from Marugu Yukume Freedom City. Mo film festival chassis. Katebango Manuanese. Mubango Bashi. November bagenda kuchakala Nyanyondo Club. Mo new face of Record FM. Celebrating 1 year Gatoli Wanese. Okinga mtwalo gumo. Ngabatamu nena bayibi abatraining ngaboka. Kinsaha, Sida Bafana, B2C, Spice Diana, DJ Shiro, Fefa Busi, Cindy, Rachel Ray, Omlange Suna, Chosen Blood, Young Mulo, Caritas Cadio, the thriller party after party. Ate bango badi wanise Mubango Basha. Nakumena 5 November mu Nyondo Club. Binamena 97.7 Record FM. Yeah, bitengese.
Welcome back. It is Daybreaker, discussing here human rights, professionalism of the conduct of police, well, in relation to human rights. I am with Simon Ssenyonga. Simon, before we left off, we were actually talking about the way interrogations are actually headed, the way they are, done, how the system, how they're using, all these systems in interrogation in a manner that you feel is not exactly proper and, unconstitutional in one way or the other. I think my question is the rights of suspects. Do you feel that the rights of suspects in Uganda are actually being observed by police? Right from the process of suspicion to the process of actually getting them in and then, interrogating them and all these other processes that needs to be carried out?
I think the first thing that, number one, has to be interrogated is the way even that suspicion is picked up. That many times the government has preferred to suspect almost everything, even without any legal justification. So what they normally do is that a suspect has their rights, number one. The biggest fundamental right is the right to liberty. That a suspect does not become a criminal because, again, it is the courts of law which declare you after they have made their judgments and they have given a proper judgment that you are a criminal or you are not actually a criminal. It's not just by mere perception of the police. So, number one, the freedom of liberty, the right to freedom of liberty, whereby anybody...
So you feel like police does not have a right to arrest you if they feel like you're a suspect?
No, they have that. Actually, they have a legal obligation that the moment they perceive that actually you're going to commit a crime, they can pick you up and arrest you. Yeah. Now, that is one of the things. But now, anybody who is suspected has a freedom he has a right to be free. What happens with most of these individuals, the police guys, they will simply pick you up and probably bundle you up, and they will presume a crime on you. Number two, your freedom of expression, especially when in the course of investigation, that you have a right actually to speak out. You have a right to be respected during the course of investigations. Now, many of these investigations are actually intimidation sessions as opposed to investigations, because in the course of investigation, there must be free course of discussion. There must be balanced discussion from the person who is interrogating and from the person who is actually being interrogated. There shouldn't be intimidation of lawyers. So a person who is suspected has a right to legal representation. especially in the course of investigation. And they are under, I've seen the police attempt someone in some of the human rights lawyers and advocates, and the police is afraid that they show up with 50 lawyers. Now, you have a right to legal representation. That is all grounded on the basis that under Article 28 of the Constitution, you have a right to a fair hearing. The right to a fair hearing means that, number one, you're going to listen to me. That number two, you're going to have a body or a person who is independent in thought and one who is not biased. Now, obviously,
Simon,
in the most practical sense.
We've seen that happening. People have been given fair hearings. When you look at even recently, Honorable Robert Chagulanyi, I think he has so many cases in court. Of course, that, due to his encounters with police one way or the other. But we have seen actually fair hearings when it comes to that. So in a way, you make it seem like, okay, this is not happening.
I think the right to a fair hearing is beyond just the words that are used. That a hearing, to be fair, number one, has a lot to do with even the way the body listening to you is constituted. For example, if you're appearing before a court of law, it should be an independent, but there shouldn't be bias that is coming off, all right? There has to be the respect for the procedure that leads to the judgment or the final conclusion. That number one, the process has to be respected. If you get somebody into the CID and you tell them that, for example, say the case that we are currently handling, the case of Prophet Elvis Mbonye, you get the person to come to the CID, and you know very well the rules that govern you under the standing orders, that you're not supposed to actually publish any information to the media. And then actually, some of these guys in investigations go ahead to call up the media so they can try to embarrass the person in question because they are a public figure. Now, that is extremely unprofessional. So fair hearing means that. Number two, that there's going to be, you have to recognize that actually a lawyer is a representation of the suspect. Now, many of these people, because they want to sort of embarrass and strain and fatigue the suspects, and I've seen it before in this case again of Prophet Elvis, that what happens is that they want to keep the Prophet appearing at police without them actually showing up. And they're saying, we don't want the legal representatives here. So literally, the police is high-handed and extremely, some of the individuals there, extremely arrogant in the way they conduct business, because they feel that the ones who have the magic wand and the ones who can swing it around and call the tunes, because they are the ones who pay the piper and they want to call the tune. So actually with them, it is that they don't even respect the procedure. Because if you tell me that I must appear for bond at, say, at 10 a.m., and the investigative officer, as this case has been actually, has kept on, absconding from obligation, and, and even if they come, they will never give you enough time. You see, the nitty-gritties of the right to fair hearing have to be put in question. That my appearance before you should be, number one, reasonable. You must conduct yourself reasonably. You can't keep on fatiguing a suspect by just extending bond. And they have done it before even to politicians. They will put charges, say, on Besigye, on Bobby Wine, and they'll simply keep on extending bond so that they can show, politically, they can show that they're in control, but also they can show that they are controlling the narrative. And because of that, they end up actually subsequently violating. And they end up actually towing a very thin line between execution of legal obligation and committing of procedural crimes, and even other crimes within the penal code, such as defamation. Because if you're going to use the media to actually paint a particular picture about a public person in the media by maligning them, I looked at some of your guys in the media when they were reporting this case of Prophet Elvis. And credible, what should be credible newspapers, you imagine them putting very weird headlines. All right. So, at the end of the day, they are wasting a lot of national resources on things that I perceive are frivolous and actually non-beneficial. But because there's an agenda that has to be set to discredit. And the other thing with the which public needs to understand, that many a times the whole handling of the criminal process, especially when they're dealing with public figures, actually has a lot to do with the politicization. And I'll give you, for example, in this particular case, that we have come out strongly to oppose that, that stupid law that the government wants to bring, the religious policy. And because of that, what they will do is that they will try to discredit you in the public through the media, the mass media, the social media, so that they can have a sort of social discontent arising and a sort of public act towards you, and then they can make their agenda clear that, by the way, look here, the guys who you are saying, like say Prophet Elvis, this guy is actually supposed to be controlled by the religious police. Reason being, he decampaigns government programs. Reason being, he does not respect the police. So if they can hold you on those two, then they can discredit you and have justification for actually passing a very, very weird law. So some of these things have always not just been about how the police has handled, but the end game has always been frustrating particular agendas which are actually not of God, so to say, from that perspective, but also agendas which are extremely illegal in the way they're executed.
Well, interesting. Simon, you had a lot to say about police and especially the way they conduct their arrests, their investigations, how they actually, when it comes to suspects and all this and all that. But on the other hand, well, next time I think I'll bring a police officer.
Yes,
on the other side of the aisle, so that it does not seem like. On the other hand, you may think that they are actually. We don't want to come off like, okay, the police is not doing anything good, and they are being manipulated and using all these state instruments. You understand? If we had a police officer, on my other hand, they would also say, okay, you've come off so biased in your opinion to us because we believe we do things in the right way. You understand? And for me, I just want to actually get clarity on what are they supposed to do when it comes to incidences like this, so that even the public, the audiences out there are aware, okay, this is a procedure. In case I am a suspect, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to, have this? Am I supposed to be represented by? So what is the police mandate vis-a-vis the public or the person, the suspect in that regard, as a lawyer?
All right. I think the first thing is that I don't think I am biased. I think I just have strong views concerning particular matters. And I have the freedom to express myself, as you may very well know. And now, number one, I have to clarify that there are very many good people in the police. Not everybody in the police is bad. The institution of the police is actually, many people, you find very many good people there, very genuine souls who have simply been manipulated by the political system. Many of them are discontented about the way things are being done. But that doesn't take away their legal obligation. They need to check their conscience in the way they do their work. Now, in regards to their legal obligation, the first primary role is that they're supposed to guard life and property. They're supposed to have respect because now there are new laws which actually put a legal mandate. For example, in 2019, this year, the Parliament enacted the Human Rights Enforcement Act, which creates further legal obligations for the police beyond what is in the Public Order and Management Act, the Police Act, other standing orders that take on the police. One of those which is very key for this discussion under the Human Rights Enforcement Act is that the police has to be a champion of the respect of human rights. Now, human rights in Uganda are enshrined under Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Now, meaning that they're supposed to respect, for example, my freedom of liberty, my right to fair hearing, the freedom of expression, my right to equality, my right to the respect of human rights, that my rights are inherent. You have to respect my, my right to not to derogate the key rights under Article 44 of the Constitution, and if the case police is going to limit my rights under Article 43 of the Constitution, the procedure has to be again as it is stated, either for the public interest or for the public order, or where the limitation is acceptable and demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic state. Beyond just the provisions within the Constitution, which is the supreme law, and the acts of parliament and the standing orders, Uganda has legal obligations, because when you read the national objectives and directive principles of state policy, the foreign policy of Uganda is to the extent of respecting of international legal obligations, and as such, Uganda ought to respect. Again, when you read Article 45 of the Constitution, it sort of introduces a new aspect of how international legal obligations come in. For example, the international standards on how arrests are conducted, on how demonstrations are quelled. We have legal obligations to be respected under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the Siracusa Principles. You have to respect the East African Treaty, the East African Protocol. You have to respect all these different international laws. Very many laws. So the police actually has different legal obligations under those laws. But for the person who is out there, they have to understand that it is not just about the police, but about how actually professionally they conduct themselves. Perhaps when you have much more time, we shall come and elaborate what this means actually.
Oh yes, I can't wait. I really can't wait. And I can't wait to get here a police officer actually on the other side. Maybe next time we shall have here Luke to tussle it out.
Yeah, I think we should. I think I'm intelligent enough to take them on.
Of course you are. Well, Simon, it has been good having you here as usual.
Thank you very
I hope
much.
to actually exhaust this thing sometime soon. And we are winding up Daybreaker. It has been a very insightful discussion. A very lovely morning it has been with you this very morning. Well, why don't we just continue with the rest of the programming? A very good morning.